Hi everybody, Richard Drummond here again at Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're talking about the merger, the coming together of Litera and their Foundation division, and also Clocktimizer, which I'm sure you read about in Artificial Lawyer and elsewhere. With us is Peter and Barry. Hi both.
Hello.
If you could just introduce yourself very briefly, and then we'll get into some of the questions. Barry, do you want to go first?
Sure. Barry Solomon. I am Vice President of the Firm Intelligence Business Unit at Litera. And my background is I was a lawyer, one of the founders of Interaction, and then part of the leadership team of Foundation.
Fantastic. And Peter?
Peter van der Hoeven. I'm one of the two co-founders and CEO at Clocktimizer, also a former lawyer, and well, currently heading the Clocktimizer team.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I'm just going to disappear, so I'm going to let everyone see you more clearly by getting out of the picture. There we go. So I just, first of all, obvious question, as people will have read, Foundation was an independent company, recently became part of Litera, which is a large business with multiple parts which are integrating together. Clocktimizer was also an independent business until very recently and has also joined Litera. Litera has well, you tell us, has a firm intelligence group, which Barry has mentioned is looking after. Now, these two companies will be working very closely together. And I guess the first question is, first of all, why did you two companies come together and how will you be working together?
Maybe I'll start from the Litera Foundation point of view and then let Peter follow. Foundation, the name implies, has always been about the foundational data platform of law firms. And that means that Foundation cannot be a silo on its own. We've always been about bringing data in from other sources. And so Peter and his team, we were actually talking to them before Litera acquired Foundation because it's a natural fit as a partnership. So when Litera acquired Foundation, they were looking at, okay, where are those good fits of companies that share our values and can provide good content to make Foundation stronger, and where we can provide good content to help other products. So that in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And Peter, what was the inspiration for the deal?
Well, like Barry said, it was we were already in talks prior to discussing any type of merger. And funny enough, it went a bit silent around end of December, January, and mid-January. I found out why when it became apparent that Litera had acquired Foundation, which was interesting because we were actually in the process of finding a good home for Clocktimizer to fuel our next phase of growth. And so that was the moment where I picked up the phone and called the team at Foundation and said, well, who should I talk to, to bring Litera into that process on our end as well. And it's really been exactly the right time and the right people to work with and the right product fit. And I think that's super important. We're from day one already looking at, okay, how can we bring in more value for the other product, and that's been amazing. It's already turning out to be an amazing ride. Good choice, I think, from our side. Sometimes you think if all those stars align, is it too good to be true? But so far, it's not too good to be true. It's actually very good.
Fantastic. Well, let's just have a look at what you both bring to the party, and I imagine there'll be other guests joining the party in the coming months and years, because if you're going to have a firm intelligence division, you're going to need a lot of intelligence. So let's start off with what Foundation's bringing. So if we could just sort of, if it's possible to do that, if you could just sort of delineate what's the data that you're capturing, and then Peter, if you could do the same. So Barry?
Yep. Foundation is a firm intelligence platform that brings in internal information from law firms from myriad data systems, time and billing, HR, CRM, docket, on, as well as external information, Thomson Reuters, Lexis, and so forth. And the four key objects that we bring together are matters, clients, lawyers, and other firm personnel as well as all of the related parties. And then we add context to that by allowing through workflow additional information. So in a nutshell, we're about gathering information and then making that available both to the firm directly, to lawyers and others, but also to other applications such as Clocktimizer. You talked earlier, I think we were off camera, but about iManage, for example. So our content can be used in many different solutions.
Excellent. Just one quick question. I was just before Peter, just one quick question back to Barry. Is when you say HR, just because obviously a lot of people watching this will be, legal or in tech. When you say it captures HR data, what do you mean?
It is depends upon the firm. We have most firms are capturing key data about lawyers, such as their education, their languages they speak, obviously the location, internal information such as billing rates, maybe in the financial system. Sometimes things are in HR, but a lot of diversity information. It really goes on and on. So.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Thank you. So, and Peter, so what's the data that you're capturing?
So we capture data that sits in a firm's financial system. In particular, the thing that we're interested in is seeing the time card narrative, because the Clocktimizer algorithm enriches that data by classifying time cards into buckets or activities, as we call them, which is helpful because it helps you understand who's doing what, when, where, and at what cost, which is an important element for Clocktimizer's budgeting and pricing solution, that we are able to match cost or hours with what people have actually done. And one could say, well, there's phase and task code data, but as we find, and as many people will know in the industry, phase and task code data is very often not as accurate as people would like it to be, to say the least.
Gotcha. Now, when we bring these two together, and it's something I talked to Haley Altman about, who also at Litera, when you did the deal, is that you can actually sort of leverage this in a very clever way, sort of indirectly, to give you insights actually about the work product itself, as opposed to the data connected to the work product. Is that, could you explain a bit about how that might work?
Yeah, how I would see that working is, for example, when people are making improvements to the work product. So if you know what things were, how much time things were taking prior to an improvement that you introduced to the firm, and you know how much time it took after you made the improvement, you can see the delta. And we see firms that take that data and say, okay, let's take this data, analyze it for a pilot project we did, and then actually leverage that to roll it out firm-wide and quantify how much the firm is going to benefit if you would roll this out at scale. And that's how, using this information about this granular insight as to what people do to actually improve the end product that lawyers are delivering to their clients.
Gotcha. And could you use it to kind of triangulate sort of templates or relevant clauses and so forth in a sort of very sort of KM focused way? So effectively, we're looking for a certain type of document which we need to use as a reference. We can't find it because our DMS is terrible, but we've got Foundation now, we've got Clocktimizer, we've got all these other data points, just like a mountaineer on a mountain who's just triangulating their course.
Yeah, there are many use cases for a firm intelligence platform. And what you're talking about, I love the phrase, I'm going to steal that, but this idea of, if I can combine the type of granular information that Clocktimizer has with information, very often in Foundation, you're getting to representative matters, not based on the billing, but based upon other characteristics of the matter, right? Characteristics such as, what was the industry? What was the type of matter? What was the type of client, the lawyers who worked on it? And as you use all of these different data points, one of the things, yes, you may want to find a lawyer, but you may want to find a document. And that's why, we see the value of really putting a platform together to bring all of these things together. Very powerful searching can be done when you combine information like this.
Interesting. And so I guess the logical next question is, how does this fit together with, well, I guess, where does firm intelligence sit within the Litera platform? I guess it now is a platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Litera now has 4 business units. So we, Peter and I and the rest of our teams, we're focused on firm intelligence. That's the data. But when you think about what lawyers do, they need the data, but they really create documents. And there's a lot involved with that. And so there's a business unit around drafting at Litera, and they have a platform for that, a business unit that focuses on transactions, and then the 4th one, litigation. And just like you can imagine, and we're starting with working with Clocktimizer together with Foundation to bring in that data, when I'm working a deal in Transact, or I'm working on a litigation matter, all of that rich data is also valuable both in Foundation and then pushing it back to them. So that's kind of the long-term vision, although all of these products by themselves provide value today.
Gotcha. And is the idea that the information will flow in both directions? So let's say, for example, I don't know, somebody's drafting some documents and you pick up some billing data from that's perhaps not in Clocktimizer, but then that gets fed back into Clocktimizer because you can use that.
Yeah, well, Foundation brings data in from many different data sources. There is a huge opportunity for Clocktimizer to consume that data for, they have this concept of DNA of matters. And I can see that just continuing to become more and more accurate as you bring in more than just financial data.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, going slightly off subject, I guess, and Barry, certainly, I'm sure you're aware of the Sally Alliance, focusing on defining effectively just what you said, matter DNA. How do we define, how do we compare, how do we classify different matters? Is that something you guys are going to look at? Not necessarily with Sally, but yourselves.
Yeah, so I'm actually closely involved with the people behind Sally. So that, and one of the things that we're looking at is how can we help? And one of the things that we're seeing is that there's actually, it's very interesting because I think Sally is a great project, and it's a great classification of matter types and types of work that belong to that matter type. But how do you link your financial data to that wonderful classification? And at the moment, there is not really a link. It is manually deciding what matter type should I assign to this matter in my financial system. And I think, and we're not there yet, but I think this is where there is an opportunity in the market, is for Clocktimizer to bridge that gap, because we are actually we can map Clocktimizer to Sally defined work types, which then can be used to calculate how what Sally matter type should be applied. So I do think that really Clocktimizer fits in there very well, actually, and it's exactly what we do. And it's great to have the standard, but applying the standard is still a manual job, and that manual job we'd like to eliminate.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and if I can just add one thing to that. The way Clocktimizer passively collects information from timesheets and is able to determine what lawyers are working on and the type of work for matters, you could bring that data then into something like Foundation, and then we're combining it with other information. And to be able to, the problem with any code, a set of a taxonomy, is if it relies on people, it can break down if people just don't have the time or the accuracy. But if you can combine standards like that with the type of automation that Clocktimizer brings, the data gets to a level where it's actually very useful.
Gotcha. It's very interesting. I mean, as you probably know, if from reading artificial law, I'm very interested in standards and taxonomies in general. I mean, it looks like actually there's a potential here, at least perhaps in the future, for Litera through Clocktimizer and through Foundation to almost create benchmarks for pricing, or fixed pricing, scope pricing, in the same way that sometimes, you know, a leading company in other industries will start defining things, and then other companies say, well, look, we could just do it ourselves, but what's the point? These guys have already done it. Let's work off the Litera standard pricing model, which then connects to the Sali Matter model. I mean, is that somewhere you could go? You know, because I mean, if you're collecting data, fundamentally what you're looking for is patterns, right? Meaning, and the next step there is to try and create some kind of repeatable, reliable standard that you can then go back to, because otherwise you're just remaking it every single time you analyze. And then finally you get to this point where you say, well, hold on a minute, why don't we just declare the benchmarks? You know, this is the average price for an X.
Richard, I can see many things that you can do with the value of this. We like to use the kind of approach, deliver first and then discuss. So everything we're talking about, so you can see a lot of things that we might do. But to be honest, there are third parties that might use this data too. We don't want to become a silo where we have this rich data and it can't be used by others, firms and other partners. But I can see a lot that Litera is positioning itself to provide exponential value in the future, apart from what Peter and I are discussing, which is what we deliver today.
Fantastic, fantastic, really interesting. Well, we don't have much time because we can't take too much of our listeners' time. But just briefly, let's just look to the future. I mean, even Foundation is relatively a new member of Litera. Clocktimizer, a very, very new member. What happens next in the next few months, 6 months, etc.? What happens next?
Well, we are. Go ahead, Peter. You start.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. It would be wonderful if we would be talking separately, right, and then say the same thing, right? But
exactly.
No, our focus is really on accelerating Clocktimizer. So part of the acquisition is also like, you know, we're going to actually increase our development of the Clocktimizer product. That's just first and foremost what we're going to do for the next months down the road. And that's the first thing we're going to do is talk with our Foundation friends now, our Foundation family members, I should say, and see, you know, where can we actually make smart connections between the two products. But like Barry said, both products separately are already adding great value, and we would be unwise, let's put it that way, if we were not to focus on that first.
Gotcha. And I'll just add, with Litera's resources, we're able to really accelerate our roadmaps, focus on them, make investments. I mean, you know, even before Clocktimizer came on board, our development team found some technology that Litera was using widely in their development that we were able to leverage as one example. The acquisition of Clocktimizer is another example. There's no way, as Foundation, a standalone, we would be able to bring together these two great companies. So, you know, that I think you're going to see each of our companies continue, you know, because we're just at the beginning of the curve in terms of what we're going to be delivering to the market.
Fantastic. And just very, very last question. What is missing now from Firm Intelligence? What other capabilities, what data sources would you like to add in?
The possibilities are endless. When you think about the key things that firms work on, it is their matters, their lawyers, their clients, and all these related parties. You can think about tons of useful data. In the past, most firms have only looked at silos of information. When you start to bring it together, the idea of connecting the dots, it's exponentially powerful. So I think you're going to see more of that.
Fantastic. Well, that's such a good final point. Well, let's leave it there. So thank you very much, Barry. Thanks very much, Peter. Good to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.